Continue with Nisim B'chol Yom 198. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sachvi bina l'havchim ben yom uvein laila, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka aretz al hamayim, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim mitzadei gaver, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein layaf koach, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir she'inam einai numa me'af apai, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani b'tselem Elohim, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani ben chorin, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asani Yisrael, who has made me a Jew. Baruch Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael betifara, who crowns Israel with splendor. Let's continue now with Chatzi Kaddish, which can be found on page 224. Yitgadal v'yitkara shemei Rabba be'amad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael bagala bagala uv'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach ve'alam ne'omei amaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yiparit romam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitadar kudshabrichu ve'lom min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Let's all stand for Baruch Hu 226. Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or v'orei choshech osei shalom v'orei et hakol hameir la'aretz v'la'arim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chochma asita mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha tit barach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha ve'al me'orei or she'asita yafa rucha sela or chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu mehera la'oro baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. We'll continue on 231. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard, Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us toward our destiny by hard events, by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming. Baruch atah Adonai. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Please be seated. 234. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, kshartam leot ayadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim v'yot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem, Emet. 240. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Ay da 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 ya ba 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 bim bam. Ay da 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 ya ba 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 bim bam. Bi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Bi chamocha neda b'kodesh. Norati lo tosef eleh. Norati lo tosef eleh. Shira chadasha shibchu geulim. Leshimcha al sfatayam. Yachad kulam hodu v'himlechu ve'amru. bam. Zur Yisrael, Puma be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. The Amidah begins on 242. Let's all stand together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chastei Avot Ve'imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shmo B'Ahava. Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Hakol, Atah Rav leHoshia, Morid Hatal. Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Mimit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua V'neiman atah l'chayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei hakol. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviecha, v'kara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch ol haaretz, Kevodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, ומושיענו וישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. Let's all read together on the bottom of page, or middle of page, 225. 255. I got my twos and my fives confused. 255. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to joy, and to peace and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness. Restrain our thirst for excess and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life and in peace and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadecha, b'yirah na'avod. 258, Birkat Shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, barcheinu yotzreinu kelanu ke'echad, be'or panecha. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torat chayim v'avat chesed, ve'avat chesed, utzedaka uvracha v'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, v'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol edu v'chol sha'a bishlomecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom. We praise you, Adonai, our God, who blesses your people Israel with peace. And now we have some time for silent prayer and meditation, reflecting on this wonderful day of Shabbat and how fortunate we are to be alive and, of course, to be together. fi ve'hegion libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, vegoali, vegoali. Torah service, page 362 in your Sidurim. Ein kamocha b'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai varech et amo v'shalom. Please stand. Av harachamim, heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Thank you. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha levad batachnu. Melech el Rambanisa Adon Olamim. Next page. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Udevar Adonai Mirushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti, Unerom mema Shemo yachdav, Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevurav hatiferet, V'hanetzach ve'ahod. Good Shabbos. Kichol b'shamayim uvaretz. Kichol b'shamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha v'yamit na'aseh lecho olerosh. Forgot to say last night, but you'll be the first to hear, our final 2 Torah covers should be shipped to us this week. So we will have, please be seated. We'll take the High Holy Day covers off finally, and we have the one other brown one, and then 2 new ones coming that we ordered in November. So we will have all of our Torah covers by next Shabbat, hopefully, as long as DHL or whoever they use delivers it. Anyway, we are going to complete the book of Leviticus this morning by reading the last few verses. And we studied a bunch of the first verses of Bahalotcha, the last parsha, this morning. So if you turn to 872, let's see if the Torah is rolled, which of course it is not. But it's so easy to find because there's a big gap. And you'll see when we lift the Torah between the end of one of the books of Torah and the beginning of the next one, so location is not a problem. I could have not said anything and had you think, oh, look, he found it. But, that would be cheating. You shouldn't do that in front of an open Torah, or a closed one for that matter. Okay, so we're going to begin around chapter 27 of Leviticus, and let's just call it 30. Okay, let me just find it in here real quick. Okay. Okay, if you'd like to bless the Torah with me, please feel free to stand up and we'll all bless it together. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah. V'chol ma'aser ha'aretz mizurah ha'aretz mipri ha'etz l'Adonai hu kodesh l'Adonai. V'im ga'ol yig'al ish mima'asro chamishito Yosef alav. V'chol ma'asar bakar v'tzon kol asher ye'evor tachat hashavat ha'asirim Adonai kodesh yihiyeh kodesh la'Adonai. Lo yivaker bein tov l'ra v'lo yimarenu v'im hamer yimirenu v'hayahu v'ut moratau yihiyeh kodesh lo yigael. Ele hamitzvot asher tziva Adonai et Moshe b'nei Yisrael b'har Sinai. So all the tithes, as you can see, all the tithes from the land, whether seed, from the ground, or from fruit of the tree, they all belong to God. They're all holy to God. If anyone wants to redeem any tithes, 1/5 must be added to them as sort of an interest, if you will. All tithes of the herd and the flock, of all that passes under the staff of a shepherd, every 10th one shall be holy to the eternal. One must not look out for good as against bad, or make substitution for it. If one does not, don't cheat on your taxes. If one does make substitution for it, then it is a substitute, and they shall both be holy. It cannot be redeemed. No tax refund. These are the commandments that the Eternal gave to Moses for the Israelite people on Mount Sinai. The last word of Leviticus is Sinai. It's sort of a way of looking forward, because the next book, Numbers, is all going to start at Mount Sinai, and now they're finally, after half of Exodus and all of Leviticus, going to move from the encampment at the Mount Sinai. Next week, we'll be taking the census, and then they'll be on their way. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek, be strong, and let us be strengthened through our love and study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And you will see as I lift the Torah, the end of Leviticus, beginning in Numbers, you will also see that we need to, this Torah is ready to go to the Sofer for some cleanup on aisle 2 and 3. Okay. Bezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai bi'ad Moshe So you saw those areas with the smudges. So what the sofer does is they have like a special, I don't know if it's like an acidic wash or some sort of wash. I'm not a sofer. But they clean it up. They take out the blemished area. They rewrite those words if they need to be rewritten, if there's damage done to them. But those blemishes are a perfect example of when it is time to get your Torahs checked. And I noticed as I was rolling that we have a partial tear on one of the parchments. So you're supposed to get a Torah checked and your mezuzah and your tefillin every 7 years. It's been probably about 7 years, if I think about it, since we had these checked. So you check a mezuzah to see if the parchment also has any blemishes. Sometimes, especially in the valley, dust gets in there, and then it can. But that's actually, those blemishes are they've probably been there a little while. They look a little older. I'm going to put the Torah just right here for a moment so we can look at our Haftorah. Please be seated. So there are two Torah portions, there are two Haftarot, and we will look at this morning the Haftorah for Bechukotai, what we just read, the parsha from which we just read. And if you're following along in your plouts, we are on page 880, looking at the prophecy of Jeremiah, chapter 16 of Jeremiah, verse 19. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nviim tovim, v'ratza v'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'torah uv'Moshe avdo, uv'Yisrael amo, uv'nevi'ei hamet v'tzedek. Time out. Time in. Eternal One, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in times of trouble. Nations from the end of the earth shall come to you and say, our ancestors inherited false gods, empty and utterly useless. How can human beings make gods? They are not gods at all. Therefore, I am letting them know once and for all. I will make them know my might and my power, and they shall know that I am called the Eternal. A fundamental difference between an idol and God is idols have if you will, a finite shelf life. God is eternal. Judah's sin is inscribed with iron pen, engraved with a diamond point, on the tablet of their hearts and the horns of their altars, to remind their children of their altars and sacred poles, near leafy trees and high hills. I will give you wealth, all your treasures as spoil to a country bumpkin, the Herite. I don't think bumpkin is the exact translation, but that's what they use in our commentary. Because of the sin of your high places throughout your borders, you yourself will lose the heritage I gave you, and I will make you serve your enemies in the land that you do not know, for you have kindled the flame of my wrath to burn a long time. Jeremiah continues, thus says the Eternal One, cursed are those who trust in mortals, making mortal flesh their strength, turning their hearts from the eternal. They shall be like a stunted tree in the desert, never seeing when good comes, dwelling in dry places in the wilderness, in a salt land where no one dwells. Blessed are those who trust in the eternal, who is in the eternal. They shall be like a tree planted near waters, sinking its root by a watercourse, never noticing when the heat comes, its leaves green, careless of times of drought, never failing to bear fruit. The human heart is of all things the most deceitful, so perverse. Who can understand it? I, the Eternal, search for the heart and test the spirit, giving to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. Those who gain wealth by unjust means are like a partridge brooding eggs that do not hatch. In the middle of life, it will forsake them. At the end, they are known to be fools. Throne of glory, exalted from the beginning, is our holy Shabbat. O hope of Israel, eternal one, those who forsake you shall be put to shame. Those who turn from you are written in the dust. For they have forsaken the fountain of living waters, the eternal. Heal me, eternal one. Only then shall I be healed. Save me, only then I shall be saved. For you are my praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol amim, tzadik b'chol adorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ve'otzeh hamdaber umkayim, shekol devorav emet v'tzedek, al haTorah ve'al avodah ve'al anviim ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim umevarechim otach Yiparach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Let's just take a moment to look at the Haftorah. It's too yummy to skip over it. We talked this morning in Torah study, a couple people sort of jumped on this bandwagon, as I did too, that it was very black and white. The curses, the blessings, if you do this, then this will happen. It was kind of harsh. I'm sorry, if you keep the covenant, if you do the mitzvah, good things will happen. If you don't, bad things. And it was very black and white, very, as we like to say these days, sort of polar opposites. And I sort of quipped, and it was serious too, that God is very black and white. You do good things, sort of like my parents were, right? They were definitely strict. Not as strict as some, but pretty strict. And, strict parents don't put up with a whole lot, and you're in trouble a lot more than you're not. In fact, strict parents, from my experience, were much more complimentary as I got older. Not so much when I was a kid, because they had this idea that if we make you proud, you won't be humble. If we raise you up, you'll act like you're all hoity-toity. And so God kind of says the same thing, but it's harsh, but in a much more, I think, symbolically well, let's look at the verse that I want to talk about, and I think a much more delightful way than in the Torah portion. We have this picture of a tree, two types of trees, in the Haftorah portion that Jeremiah uses. So one is, in verse 5, cursed are those who trust in mortals, making mortal flesh their strength, turning their hearts from the eternal. They shall be like one kind of tree. It's stunted, it's in the desert, it basically is dry, it has no leaves, it's shvach. It's a tree, and it's just sort of there, and it may be kind of schlunked over. It's getting no water, it's got no life to it. It's a dead tree. Basically, that's what Jeremiah says. And then he says, aha, but blessed are those, the ones who do heed the voice of God and trust in God and so on and so forth. They, and we use this verse in the liturgy for a funeral because it gets picked up in Psalms. They are like a tree planted near water. Like I was talking to a bar mitzvah kid earlier this week about the Fertile Crescent. And I said, what makes the Fertile Crescent fertile? Because we were looking at a text that had the Tigris or the Euphrates or something like that in there. He said, I don't know. I'm like, oh, good. So they taught you what the Fertile Crescent is, kind of where it is, but didn't tell you why it was fertile. Because these two rivers that are mentioned in Torah over and over again, the Euphrates, the Tigris, if you have your land near, and then he started nodding, like, yeah, I get it. If you have your land near water, you can grow better crops because there's more water in the soil itself. So they shall be like a tree planted near water, has deep roots, it gets water, it's happy, and it's so happy, the tree doesn't even notice when the heat comes, and never fails to bear fruit. So there are two types of Jews and two types of Israelites in this case. One is those who follow they're sort of like a stump. I'm sorry, they're sort of like a beautiful blossoming fruit tree. And then there are the ones who don't follow, and they're sort of like a stump. They don't get fed, and they're sort of sitting there wilted. So I don't know if that's a better image than what we got from the Torah portion, from those who follow the rules versus those who don't follow the rules, but I think it's really a nice image. The next part is really interesting as well. And this goes to a question, which is, when Jeremiah says, the human heart is of all things the most deceitful, so perverse, who can understand it? It goes to the question of, are we in our hearts good people or bad people? Are we good or bad? If we're good, we make good choices and so on and so forth. If we're bad, we make bad choices. But what is the state of our nature? It sounds like Jeremiah is saying, at the end of the day, human beings are not so good. The human heart is, of all things, deceitful and perverse. What do you think? Is Jeremiah saying you start from the dry tree and you have to grow into a flowering tree? Are we born bad? Are we born good? You don't have to answer. I'm just throwing that out there. It can be, but you can only be born one way, good or bad. I mean, according to this, we're pretty bad. Right. Remember, we all studied that in college.
What's that free will kind of thing?
Right. Right.
I don't agree.
Tell us why you don't agree.
Well, I think there are people who are born bad.
Oh, okay. So some people, there is a philosophy that some people are we did this Hobbes and Rousseau, remember, in college? So one is we're born evil, sinful, deceitful, whatever you want to call it.
Or the tendency, let's say.
Have a lean toward that, and then we have choices to make in our life about whether we want to improve ourselves. Some people are born good. Now, the prayer that we say in the morning, we didn't read it this morning. Actually, we should start reading it. The Adonai, God, the heart that you have given me is pure. You formed it. You breathed air into it for me, so on and so forth. So the idea in that prayer is that we're actually born pure. But Jeremiah doesn't necessarily say that here. So he's just something to think about is the human heart is not so good according to Jeremiah. But God searches your heart, giving everyone according to their ways, to where they are at, according to the fruit of their dealings. It's almost as if to say God has an individual relationship with each one of us. At the end of the Torah portion, of the Haftarah portion, I love the last few words. Heal me, Eternal One, only then shall I be healed. Save me, then I shall be saved. For you are my praise. What's that about? That's about this concept that we have, a very fundamental concept in Judaism, is that by faith, true faith, deep spiritual belief, so on and so forth, you're already healed before you even get sick. Or, as I said at the beginning of COVID, there's in the Talmud this idea that the sickness is created so that the cure will come. In other words, we have sickness that is created, it's preordained, and the reason why it's this illness, whatever it is, I know we're all thinking immediately of COVID, but that may not be the only example. It's created with the antidote already in mind. And as if to say, nature will create viruses. Oh, let's do COVID, we're there. We'll create these dangerous viruses, but God creates those viruses and the antidote at the same time. And depending on where you are as human beings, as a society, as people, that idea is that if you're good and you're faithful and so on and so forth, it'll be much easier to find the cure because it's already there. If not so much, you won't find the cure and more people will get sick and die. I'm not saying I believe in that theology. I'm just saying that exists in Judaism, that the cure is created at the same time as the disease is. And that's also a nice metaphor for this part of the Haftarah portion. Healing is always there, even before we get sick, mentally sick, physically sick, and so on. And salvation, which sounds like a Christian concept, but is very much alive and well in Judaism, salvation of your heart, of your soul, is also within you. The goal of every person is to, before they die, try to purify, heal, save themselves, if you will, from all of those outside influences that would make us that dry, brittle tree. So not in some generalizations, that's what Jeremiah is trying to get to. Of course, he's predicting the destruction of Judah and the southern kingdom, let's not say predicting, but giving a warning that if they continue to go down the bad path, they're going to be that tree, they're going to be kicked out and eventually sent to Babylonia for the Babylonian exile. So he's predicting, warning the Israelites to get their you-know-what together and start to make better choices as a society. Okay, we're going to, where am I? Return the Torah to the Aron HaKodesh. Please turn to 374 and please stand. Where am I? Yeah, hallelujah, et Shem Adonai, ki nisgav shemo levado, odo al eretz v'shamayim, vayaren keren le'amo, Kehilah lechol chasidav, Livnei Israel, Am Kerovo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba, v'tomcheha meushar, deracheha darkei noam, L'chol netivoteha shalom, hashivenu Adonai, elecha v'nashuva, chadesh, chadesh yameinu, chadesh yameinu, kekedem. 586. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, latet gedula le'otzer breshit, shelo asanu kugoye aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. On this Shabbat, we think about those loved ones who have died in this season or in seasons past. We think about our loved ones whose names are lovingly listed on our Shabbat flyer. If anyone would like to say out loud the name of a loved one who would like us to take into our hearts with our own, please do so at this time. May all of their memories be for a blessing. Mourner's Kaddish 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayi d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach le'alam le'omei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to those who are grieving. Amen. We'll do Kiddush and Hamotzi out in the rotunda. Let's finish with Ein Kelohenu 626. Ein Kelohenu, Ein kadonenu, ein kemalkenu, ein kemoshienu, mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Emalkenu, mich Moshienu, nodel Eloheinu, nodel Adonenu, nodel Emalkenu, nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. If you haven't already signed up for the Shabbaton next Shabbat, please feel free to do so. We'll have regular Shabbat services for everyone, and then Shabbaton participants will go to lunch after our services next Shabbat morning. Anyway, I'll see you out in the rotunda. Shabbat Shalom.